pitted against the power and treachery of the sea ice, the difficult surfaces of the snow, the biting winds and blizzards. 5 of us terrorize the hidden crevasses that appear like rings beneath our feet. 5 of us inexorably linked, yet utterly alone.
I have always been an opportunist. I think that sort of pioneering aspect of anything I love. I like a challenge. I say that to a lot of people.
And that's also what I like the most about it, is that you meet people who you've never met before, who have real talent, and yet are saying the words that you've heard for so long in rehearsals, uttered by other people.
The play was massive. I had no idea how to stage it. I went through a process of, God, you know, where do you begin with this?
The gorgeous ridiculousness of this project is 2 amateur companies from across the world coming together to become a joint international company, if you like.
We are regular visitors to Australia. We've got family living in a place called Mullumbimby. And on one of the visits, Kath and I took out a script that we'd been putting together about the life and work of Dylan Thomas. Kath's daughter, in fact, asked us to do something in her little coffee shop in Lyme Regis about Dylan Thomas as part of the celebration of, I think it was 100 years after his birth. So we cobbled something together, got a group of friends and actors and so on, and just performed this script in a small coffee shop. Went down very well, so we thought we would take it with us on the next trip to Mullumbimby, with a view, I think, to trying to get one performance in Byron Bay Arts Centre, a theatre in the middle of the town in New South Wales. And then one day we were walking through Mullumbimby and noticed a wooden building which said Drill Hall Theatre Company, and we'd not noticed this before at all. And they offered us 6 nights, and were very supportive and friendly and welcoming. And then after the final performance, we suggested going for a meal and some drinks. And I think Kath then suggested the idea that Everyman Theatre Company in Cardiff and the Drill Hall might one day work together.
And of course, as you do at the end of the run of performances of this script, we went for a drink. We went for a drink in the middle pub in Mullumbimby, and I had a couple of glasses of rosé and said, hey, wouldn't it be a really good idea if the Drill Hall Theatre Company and Everyman Theatre Company got together and did a production jointly? And Greg Aitken from the Drill Hall said, wow, Kath, that's a really good idea, let's do it. And that was it.
One of the Drill Hall Theatre people, Greg Aitken, gave me a copy of a play that he thought I might be interested in, by Patricia Cornelius, and that was Do Not Go Gentle. And he asked me to read it and tell him what I thought of it.
I heard about the playwright Patricia Cornelius a couple of years ago. It was not terribly well known. She's starting to become more popular now, and she's now 64, so she's been around a long time. And I was listening to ABC Radio in Australia, which is equivalent to BBC here, and there was a playwright on with Patricia Cornelius called Andrew Bevell, and he's someone whom I admire very much as a writer, and he was saying how great this play, Do Not Go Gentle, was, and it has never been produced by a major state theatre company.
It was a hard read. It took me 3 or 4 times reading it through to try and make sense of what this playwright was driving at. And I found it quite fascinating. because it works on so many levels. The metaphor of Scott's journey to the South Pole being a vehicle really for looking at life and getting older and facing issues and conditions and that final individual journey that we're all one day going to be facing. I've begun to realise that just recently there's been a sort of theme running through the work that I've done.
What we were doing dovetailed perfectly with the aims of the Gwanwyn Festival, which is run and organised by Age Cymru.
You don't really think about that. You see a piece of theatre work and you decide, yeah, that's what I want to direct next, or that's what I want to act in next, or whatever. And it's just part of, I don't know, part of your plan for the year or the 2 years or whatever.
What we decided to do was to put on extracts of the play in first space in chapter, as part of their Dementia Awareness Week.
And it was really useful for the whole rehearsal process. I had to choose extracts which weren't necessarily, linked, but gave a flavour of the play and some of the issues involved. And in order to do that, that was the very first time I actually sat down with some of the Cardiff cast and talked about the character they were playing, the backstory that they thought, applied to their character, the relationship between them and other characters. And we did a lot of detailed character analysis ready for this event.
And it became quite cathartic, I think. There was a lot of very, very positive feedback from that. And then out of it, we created kind of poem, really, of what people felt how people felt they wanted to be treated in their later years.
And it's a very topical subject at the moment, and you're really aware how big it is and how frightening and how easily it could just happen to any one of us.
And we went to University of the Third Age groups, we went to community groups, so we went as far as Tonnereville, we went to community groups in Roos where we live, Barry, just talking about the play and trying to get people interested.
It is interesting what you said, because the play is all about realities. It's about losing the father. It's all those people who are experiencing realities where the play has sex in it, it's blood, it's hate, just frustration. And in a sense it takes you on that journey in the context of the metaphor, but you actually see those people. And you're quite right, to them, that is as real as the sun coming up.
I mean, I've got so many potential cast lists piled up. It was one of the most difficult casting processes I've been through, and on audition processes as well, because it's not just a case of individuals being right for the part. It's about relationships.
I wanted to work with Ray because he did Our Town and I couldn't audition for it, and then I was free to be involved as a crowd, and I thought it would be really nice to work with him. And I thought the chance of going to Australia was the other thing. So really those two, I mean, we were told right at the beginning if we were cast, we weren't necessarily going to be chosen to go to Australia. It's just sort of keeping my fingers crossed.
If there's a husband and wife, do I want them to be in Mullumbimby so they can work together? If it's a father and son, same thing applies. Or, because it's a play about dislocation and disconnection and people not really sure where they are or who they are or what they're doing and how they relate to each other, do I want to deliberately disconnect people?
Ray found me down here one night and asked me to come along to a workshop, so I did. And then he asked me to come to another workshop, so I did. And then he phoned me up and said, "You've got the part of Scott." And then he phoned me up and said, "You're going to Australia."
But it's also about, will that group of people work together as an ensemble, and do they feed off each other as well as relate to each other as characters. And I went through all of that in Mullumbimby first, so I had a pretty good idea of who could play which part, whether they related to each other, whether they worked well together, knowing that back in Cardiff I had X, Y, Z, and I could juggle those around, but I couldn't be seen to be favouring one rather than the other. That was the other dimension. And then...
That's the interesting thing about this. I have the pleasure of working with two actresses, both of whom are very different take, but both of whom are very good.
One immediate challenge was, how can I possibly rehearse this play in Australia and in Cardiff when I've got nearly half the cast over there and half the cast here? And the only way I could see of doing it was by saying, look, we'll have to have a full cast in Mullumbimby. So the 5 international touring group would be supplemented by 4 other people who are prepared to come to rehearse, work with those, not learn the lines necessarily, but read the lines, and possibly do a local tour. And I said the same back in Cardiff.
I'd recently moved over from Oxfordshire to Cardiff, and I was just establishing myself here, and I decided to join a theatre company because I've always loved acting and I had been out of practice, so I thought, yeah, it's the right time for me to join a company, and found Everyman, discovered that it was only 10 minutes away from where I live, and looked on their website and discovered there was a play reading a couple of nights from, when I was looking, so I came along, and it was this play, Do Not Go Gentle, with Ray and a few of the other members, and we did a play reading, and then Ray said, if you're interested, keep in touch and perhaps you can audition.
So the next thing was, how do I rehearse? How do I rehearse with both of these? So I decided that the only way I could do it was to spend a month in Australia in May, and I chose my time pretty carefully, because the other thing that I've not spoken about is all the other stuff that's going on with each company. They're still doing their plays, we're still doing our plays, and there's this going on in the middle. So when can I go to Australia? When is the drill hall available? When are people available to rehearse? Kath and I ended up going for the month in May, and I think we managed something like 14 rehearsals in 19 days. That included a couple of workshops and bits and pieces that you needed to do to get the group working together and so on. And we had a ball, it was great. And we were able then to sort of lay down the foundations of the production. Oh yeah, actually, if you do that, you see, that's the end, and then very slowly, it's constant stress. You don't have much time to just sit and think and reflect and whatever. There are always things going on.
But I think we were very naive in the very early stages. I mean, I've said that, we said, right, well, let's get together and do it. So we sat round a table, and there were a few kind of underlying assumptions that I didn't realise at the time how unrealistic they were.
We got a fair bit of the blocking done, we'd got a fair bit of what are the issues if we use this raised platform to the scale that the designer is, well, it's not going to work because it's too big for the stage. So let's reduce the height, let's reduce the size, check with the designer that all sorts of weird things crept in. And when I asked the Aussie cast to bring in clothing that they thought might be suitable for the production, they brought in the most colourful assortment of clothes I've ever seen in my life. You know, brightly coloured hats and beanies and cardigans and jumpers, which were totally inappropriate.
There were 12 people who went from Everyman to Mullumbimby, and there were 10 people who came from Mullumbimby to Cardiff. We only managed to arrange hosting situations for 6 in Mullumbimby and 5 in Cardiff. Through no fault of anybody's, it was just unrealistic. Some people could not host their sort of partners, if you like. And so that fell on me. I felt I had to find accommodation for everybody. And that's why I'm saying that the fact that some people were happy to say, all right, well, I'll pay for my own accommodation, was an enormous relief. It was a bit unfair, but it was nevertheless, the project wouldn't have come off if people hadn't been prepared to do that.
What I had to do then was use that as a basis to come and rehearse with the Cardiff people in June and July and most of August, and fine-tune and tweak and change some of the stuff we'd already done out there. Right, so how do I keep the thing bubbling over there? I asked 2 people to carry on with the sort of directing. So Julianne Sanderson and Max Donati. Max was in the cast anyway. Were charged with keeping it rolling and keeping rehearsals going and making sure that the people who were involved in coming to Wales learned their lines and mastered their lines and rehearsed often enough for the thing to become, you know, very familiar, if not second nature.
And there were also quite a few people who were very generous in saying, well, either I'll give you a very cheap rate for Airbnb or I'll take somebody with me even though I'm not part of the project. So yes, that was probably the most stressful time for me trying to, and some of the accommodation wasn't even worked out until, from our end, until we were actually over in Mullumbimby, and I was like losing my sleep at nights thinking, oh my God, I've brought all these people to Mullumbimby and I haven't got anywhere for 2 of them to stay.
We also sort of agreed that this was too big a project for just one person. Kath had already been involved in the Dylan Thomas thing, and we had talked, and she wanted to obviously follow this through with me because of the links with Mullumbimby and the drill hall and people there. And basically I think it was suggested, I can't remember it, it may even have been Kath who suggested setting up a working party to see the whole project through. And I think once that had been proposed and people were happy that the board was represented on this working party and communication channels would be open, so all the information was flowing back and forth.
I think this is only the second time it's ever been performed in the world, so we had a real obligation to the playwright and to our audience and to our respective companies, which I think now has become one.
I think so.
So, yeah, look, our crew and our enlarged crew are really excited. It's a fantastic, beautiful adventure, and Anna was quite right. I'm sure by Saturday we'll all be friends for life. Cheers.
Cheers.
Don't take any notice of those ugly rumours about rain and things like that. It's parched here, as you can see by all the brown grass and everything. But it's lovely to have you here, and I think it's a fantastic thing that you're doing here. A joint organisation with, you know, two companies, thousands of miles apart. I don't know how you've managed it logistically. It must be a nightmare to try and work it out. And one of the things for me that I found improving, and it's great because, you know, the play that you're doing, you know, I understand is about old age and how you cope with that. And as somebody who's gradually getting to the wrong end of things, as they say, it's nice for me to learn new things as well as I'm going along, and I'd never heard of Mullumbimby till this was organised. So it's great for me that I can still be learning even at my great age, you know, about these places. And one of you will have to show me on a map where it is, so that I can actually get a better idea. But I think it's great, a great collaboration. I wish you all the best with your play. I think it's a great idea. You know, I don't know who actually came up with the actual idea around it, but you know, and organising it around the Scots exhibition, of course, and Scott being right, well done. You know, and of course, strong connections with Cardiff, as I was saying earlier to people. So, you know, the fact that you can come together and do this, and then, you know, the lucky so-and-so's going out to Australia to go over there for a holiday and do a bit of performing while they're out there. So, absolutely fantastic. And I just hope that it's a roaring success for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Ray. Lord Mayor, you'd be very pleased to know that they're looking after us very well. Yesterday we climbed the Gar, and that was a terrific thing. So we've been taken around to gorgeous places in Cardiff, and it was my first time, and I think most all of the Australians. It's such a beautiful city. We didn't anticipate it to be so glorious. The great thing about the play is the title, of course, is Do Not Go Gentle, which is from the Dylan Thomas poem. It's an Australian play, and of the Scott expedition is a strong part of it. And the interesting thing, starting with rehearsals, is because we were rehearsing the play in Australia, and every man was rehearsing it here, and now we're starting to blend together. But the fascinating thing for me is starting to hear the Welsh voices do this Australian play. And what's been coming through to me a lot is how much of Dylan Thomas, not so much in the text, so they do borrow from the poem, but it's got a lovely Welsh feel to it. And what works, and we weren't quite sure whether it would work, is the combination of Australian voices and Welsh voices. And it's almost like a Welsh choir. It's absolutely beautiful and touching. So,
you've had a lot of Welsh people come over there, of course, haven't you?
Over the years, yes.
South Wales, of course.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's true. States, yeah. One thing that the Welsh were always very good at was stealing stuff, so a lot of us went and visited
well, my mother's father was a coal miner, and Zoronda Valley up in Newcastle, and all. So when you come out to Australia, we'd very much love to invite you to Byron Shire, and we'll take you around and show you our little theatre and all of Mullumbimby. But thanks for welcoming us. This is a real treat.
Yeah, of course. When you're trying to, and that's the whole difference between entertainment and art, isn't it? You know, when you're an artist and you're trying to push a craft. Absolutely. You know, on the other hand, you know, from a punter's point of view, sometimes some people just want to have a laugh and they just want to, you know, they're thinking, okay, I'm meeting first, or I'm going to have a wine afterwards. Do I want to sit and sit in the world of a topic which is quite brutally honest, you know,
well,
raw,
that's right.
You know,
yeah.
They're important, but it's quite often, if you look at it in a film sense, it's often not until after you watch it, you might stumble on it and then think this is an incredible film. I never chosen it if I, you know, so it's you know, it's a hard thing to overcome, isn't it?
Every performance was a high. Sellout performances, the promotion work that we did in the local farmers markets in Mullumbimby and in Byron Bay, they were real highs. We got to meet local people and chat to them, and there was a lot of interest generated, and some of the cast really excelled themselves. You know, they went out and sold the show. And even when we were in informal situations, we went out for a lunch in a cafe in Byron Bay and on the beach, and we look up and there's Arnold Phillips singing a Welsh song to a couple of New Zealanders who were sitting at a table, trying to persuade them to come and see the play. Greg Aitken opened his house up to us as the party house. Mullumbimby shuts down at 9 o'clock at night, or 9:30. I think maybe the pub stays open for a little bit longer than that. But Greg said, look, there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, everybody back to our house, and we put on food and drink, and that was amazing.
Every audience came back with comments about how they had been affected by the play. Obviously, depending on people's life experiences, some people had been hit quite hard by the themes of the play. It's about people getting old and what that does to you. But everybody had also said they were very glad that they had seen it because it had made them less afraid to actually think about, talk about, confront some of those very difficult issues. There were people who shied away from going to see the play in the first instance and actually came and said to me, I can't go and watch it, I just can't. I mean, I think the cast too went through emotional turmoil in the early stages of rehearsal, but by the end of the process were saying, what a very clever play, what a very cathartic play to be involved in, and how their own thinking and adjustment to the subject had changed over the time of the experience. We had so many letters, emails, cards of thanks and appreciation and congratulation, not just for putting on a good play. If I just read what one person said: to dear Kath and Ray, I thank you for all your efforts. This has been a huge project and I have loved being a part of it. What is inspirational is the goodwill and commitment shown by all. What can be achieved by this? 'Tis a pity politicians don't take this on board. Thanks again, great idea Kath, great direction Ray. We have pursued the mounting of the production of Do Not Go Gentle, but the good things which have come our way are the friendships and great times we've all experienced. And I think that really says it all for the people who were involved in it. It was just tremendous.
It was amazing and very truthful.
The Q&A in chapter was after the matinee performance on the Saturday, which didn't have a huge audience to begin with, but several people did stay behind, supplemented by quite a few of the cast and backstage crew from the production itself, which was good because I think that they could offer questions and comments.
There were some really nice responses from people who empathised with the play and the situations, and one woman said, you know, there were moments in my life on the stage.
But there were several people who spoke, as I've said, about their own personal experiences of dementia and really complimented the performance of the play in helping them to deal with their experience and think about it and what have you.
Some very nice comments about the acting and the set, that it provoked a lot of thinking, and you didn't just sit there enjoying froth. You had something to get your teeth into and think about, if you've got any teeth.
When we went to Mullumbimby, more than half the audience, again it was a matinee performance which was a sellout, we were sending people away. So there were over 100 people in the audience and about 60 of them must have stayed for the Q&A. So we didn't anticipate managing such a large Q&A. And the feeling that was coming across to us was just one of, it's just thank you for doing this, thank you for coming, thank you for presenting. And there was not one political comment. It was all about how a community must support its own older people and celebrate them and be with them and be proud of them and supportive of in whatever state they end up being. And certainly shouldn't be tucking them away or ashamed of them or guilty about them or shy away from this in any way whatsoever.
It was solely about the play, the impact of the play, their own experiences, and how we've all got a responsibility as family and friends to acknowledge and support and help those who are getting older and have these, various things happen to them as a result.
In our own little way, perhaps that's the role of the arts in troubled times, is to get people to work together rather than dividing them up into ethnic groups or religious groups or whatever. So to me, the great joy of getting this show and production together is actually getting the people, our people, united, and it's just working wonderfully. This is how the world should be.
Well, being of the age that Maria is or nearly, it's brought to mind the whole ageing process and what a challenge that is. And there, but for God go I, ending up in a nursing home. So, but mostly I just found it such a challenge just to step into the shoes of Maria and to try and portray her as Patricia Cornelius meant her to be portrayed.
Life goes on. Don't give up. Even though you might develop dementia or Alzheimer's, try and keep going.
And I think that's what I'm learning in life. And the beauty of theatre is, you can have an experience like working on Do Not Go Gentle, which can actually give you some knowledge into your own life. And I think one of the messages of the show, to me anyway, is really live and enjoy and enrich the moments and make it precious. And I think that's one of the things of the play. And indeed, I think it's a great life lesson.
I wonder if the audience will understand it on a once through watching. Because when you do it again and again, you get so much from it and you work on it and build it up. And you sometimes wonder, does it come across to the audience? But then in a way, as long as something comes across to the audience, it doesn't matter if everything that you want to come across, as long as they get something from it and get their own story and enjoy it.
To me, I suppose, and I've continued to think about that it's a play about life as much as about death, about questions about how to live your life and our journeys, our own personal journeys.
So I suppose it's about the teamwork. It's phenomenal. I mean, people have put in, at the end of this, they will have put in hundreds, if not 1,000 hours of their time, and financially paying themselves to take this across the world.
But I think just being part of it, so many people made friends, had experiences, went to places, performed a play that they knew was at the heart of everybody's being, about who we are, what we are, about the human condition. And I helped to achieve that, which was good. It was a challenge, and those challenges people met, and that I'm so proud of. That, from both companies, people met the challenges. They had the resilience.
So we are all gathered here tonight to celebrate the end of an amazing season of Do Not Go Gentle, and it's full of mixed feelings. It's sad that it's all over, it's a relief that it's over, it's joyous that we managed to pull it off and we had a great time. We've made amazing friends.
Friends
I am
and
the
connections.
royal we.
Yeah.
The whole experience has been a
Truly
major
wonderful.
standout for me personally, not the royal we, in my life. And
For
Susan?
me, it's just a mind-blowing thing because, you know, I had no idea what I was getting into. I thought I was just going along to sing a little song or two. And why on earth would you take an Australian to Wales to sing, for God's sake? You know, what is Wales good for apart from rugby players? So it was a very steep learning curve for me, but what an experience. And as Kate says, you know, some wonderful friendships and connections and good food. Few laughs, quite a few laughs. Yeah, so, but I ditto all Kate said about relief and joy and, yeah.
And the Last Supper, if we're looking a little bit down and flat, it's because it is the Last Supper as
Are we looking
Ray
down
and
and
Kath prepare to leave tomorrow to go back to Wales, and then it really is all over, Red Rover. I guess as somebody said, we had a question and answer after one show, and as somebody said, she feels less anxious about the whole process. And I sort of tend to agree with that. Because, it's a process and fun can be had out of, and it will be a tragic thing, especially for my character who had early onset. Well, I'm past that, so I'll get ordinary onset dementia maybe, not early onset. But it's life, and how lucky we had been to have had this experience, to have had the fun that we had in the nursing home, and it was just great. And I'm really sorry, unfortunately, I feel by the end of the season, it was, which is always the way, it was so easy and flowing, and if only we could have just done more and more, but
Well, especially for me, because I just felt so naked and so vulnerable in the beginning, but by the second weekend of Mullumbimby was like, yeah, go. But Maria was an interesting character. She was so vulnerable, and yet she was incredibly strong. And
I could be quite blasé and say one of the most pleasing things was that it's finished. That we did it, that we got there, that we achieved everything we set out to do. That was amazing. The amount of emotion flying around that hall on that night when we finally played the last piece of music, and you know the applause went on and on and on. It was incredible. So yeah, having got there in the way that we did, and I believe creating a group of people who become friends. They became a real ensemble. People came out of the woodwork who had never done anything in theatre before and got involved. And you know, there were several moments when Man of the Match awards were given for, you know, services rendered and stuff, and that became a bit of a running joke. But it absolutely encapsulates the commitment and loyalty and effort that people put in. So that was an amazing outcome for me. Another amazing outcome, and she's going to hate me for saying this, was the way Kathy organised the working party. We didn't always agree, and in fact, you know, it did cause a lot of stress and so on, but she did a remarkable job of coordinating the whole project, and everybody, I think, has acknowledged that and has given her the praise that she deserves. Logistically, you know, quite an extraordinary achievement, really.
Wilson? Wilson! I want to tell you something before I go. Something I've been holding on to for quite some time now. It seems silly, but I can't remember why. I've never loved a woman before. Wilson, My dear friends, we did something remarkable, didn't we? Men